Well, good morning. Grannygear here for Old Guy on a Bike. Isn't it fun to plan for a new bike, right? The N+1 dilemma. You gotta figure out which one and which one's right for you. There's lots of great choices out there right now. And if you're building it custom, if you're starting with like a frame and going on, well, you've just got all kinds of choices. Well, I just went through that process and there were some challenges, and I'll tell you why and how it all worked out, what we were shooting for. And well, that's what this video is about, because we are reviewing in detail Mrs. Grannygear's new all-road travel bike. Now you notice I said this bike was for Mrs. Grannygear, not for yours truly. Well, that makes it a little bit more complicated because, there's a lot of decisions to be made when you're building up a custom bike, a frame up bike for yourself, right? When you're doing it for someone else, there's an added level of responsibility because, well, I need to get it right. Now, it's not that she's incompetent in regards to bikes and cycling. She isn't. She knows what she likes. She knows what fits right. She knows what she likes to ride when she's riding it. But getting there really wouldn't be her wheelhouse, right? I'm the one she's going to rely on to make those decisions as far as picking something that's the right frame to begin with, tire size, gearing, and things like that. So I had a lot of decisions to be made because this was what we were shooting for. This was our goal. And then we'll get to what we built and so far how it's worked out. I have a great relationship with David Turner. I think he makes very, very nice bicycles at a very, very good value. Well, he just happened to have one extra frame that would be in her size in a last year's, basically, Artie, which is an all-road tie, A-R-T-I. And that fit the bill. It had tire clearance up to a 38. I think I can get a 40 in there. I haven't tried it, but I bet you I can. So that was plenty of tire for this bike. It also, I've ridden it. I actually rode, my size of an Artie back, and I did a video on that. Quite a nice little road bike experience, actually, and yet it's going to be fine for a mild rails to trail. It'd be great on just mild dirt roads. Actually, so the attributes of the bike, tire size and overall geometry and the fit for her, when I looked at the chart between her BMC e-bike, which she just loves, the fit, I've almost changed nothing on that but a shorter crank, and I upgraded wheels and things. But the geometry of that, great fit for her. And looking at the numbers and the charts, the Artie was right in there with only a few millimeters here and there. And I thought, perfect. So Mr. Turner, I reached out and I said, I'd like to buy that. He gave me a very, very good price on it. It wasn't free. And it sat in a box in the garage for a while. Well, I was trying to decide on some other important decisions. For instance, what gearing do I put on this thing? Yes, gearing. What is the proper gearing for the situation we were going to be using this bike in? Now, a little insight into Mrs. Grannygear. I've ridden with her for a long time now, right? Obviously. And I would watch her ride. I'd watch her ride her Amonda road bike, and I'd watch her ride her gravel bike too. Both of them 2x front chain rings. Little different gearing, 2x11. You know what chain ring she used most of the time? She used the small chain ring. Made me kind of crazy actually, because there are times she really should be in the big ring, but she just only shifted in the big ring when she was kind of going downhill. So she'd be cross-chained, and I thought, my goodness, either we have marital instability from me continually harping on her to, honey, you really should be in the different chain ring. Or maybe I should just make her bike 1x. Now that is exactly what I did. However, it wasn't just because I was annoyed because she stayed in the small ring too much. No, I realized that she was actually pretty happy there and it was working for her. I mean, mechanically it's not a great decision, but it was working for her. And I thought, you know what, maybe you were just born to be 1x where you are always in the right front chain ring. The trick was, for this bike, what gearing spread should I go for? Now, in the end, I chose a 1x mullet, which seems a little extreme for an all-road bike. However, I wanted to give her more of an edge in lower gears than top end. And I also knew I was going to sacrifice close spacing in the rear of the bike. Now, as far as like gaps and cadence. Now, to back this up even further, when we bought her BMC e-road bike, I chose the SRAM Rival 1x and its Explorer, right? And that was, in a way, kind of my litmus test to see if this proof of concept worked for her. And you know what? It did. She's never come to me and said, I don't have enough of low gear and I don't have enough high gear. An Explorer cassette is reasonably tight, right, in that sense. However, I was also aware that she's got a motor on that bike. So if there is a gap, right, maybe you don't notice it as much with the motor. So I was taking this into consideration, but I was certain that I wanted to make 1x work on this all-road bike. And I chose mullet because it gave me a wider range because, well, here's what I was thinking about. On the e-bike, her low gear is a 44-44. 44 tooth front chainring, 44 top cog on her cassette. So that is 1-to-1. Now, even on a regular non-e-bike, well, that's a pretty low gear. With the motor helping you, and she almost never goes into the upper levels on this. Yeah, she's pretty fit. She gets that little something something from the motor, you know. 1-to-1, that's going to be pretty much plenty. In a 44-10, well, she's not spinning out a 44-10. What I decided to do on this bike with the mullet was run a 1050 for the moment. It's a 1050 cassette, not a 1052, with a 42 tooth front chainring. Now, a 4250, that's a pretty low gear. 4210, as far as a tall gear, well, that's not as much as she has on her other bike. However, based on my experience running the gravel bike with a 4010 combination, well, you're going pretty fast if you're spinning out a 4010, honestly. And for the use of this bike and the situation she'd be using it, well, she runs out of gear. She's just going to have to coast. So the crank ended up being a Praxis crank. I'll put the name up on the screen. I can't remember what it's called. It's an alloy crank they actually really don't make anymore. I think they kept the name, but they went to like a carbon construction crank. I moved all of her road bikes a while ago, gravel bikes, etc., all to a 165 crank. That worked out really, really well for her. And I had these sitting around. I'd never used them. I didn't really remember why. I bought them for something. They just didn't get used. So I thought, well, that's nice, you know. I don't have to buy a crank. And so I reached out to Praxis and got the correct bottom bracket for this. It's a T47 external bottom bracket, external bearing on this Turner Arty. And I got that set up, and I also converted it to a single ring crank because Praxis has the parts to do that. And so I got a Praxis chainring in a 42 tooth count and put that on their Praxis crank, and that thing spins nice and free. Praxis makes some very, very nice things. You know, they make a road crank that's a 48-32 that honestly, in my opinion, is probably what most the people in my class of riding, at least, they're running like a 50-34. I think they'd really be better served with a 48-32. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. So I had the crank and bottom bracket, got that installed. That was good. I had already run all the hydraulic lines and stuff through the frame. The Arty has some internal routing available for shifting and brake cables. Now the back of the bike, the cassette, like I said, I went with a 1050 12-speed mullet setup on this. I used the Garberuk 1050 cassette because they give you that very nice spread. And the upper three gears aren't as gappy as the SRAM version of this. It's kind of nice with the 44 instead of a 42 as a second cog. That works out really, really well. A little bit better, finer cadence at the top. And when I put the chain on, I sized it for a 52 cassette. And so I do have a Garberuk 1052. If we find out this 1050 is not low enough, or we have a ride coming up that we think is, you know, going to be maybe very steep, very long, very up-road, off-road, whatever, I can throw a 1052 cassette on there, give just for that day, for that ride, a little bit lower gearing. So that worked out pretty well. And isn't that purple cassette pretty? Oh my gosh. Now you can see there's got a, you know, titanium's kind of plain, so we had to have some kind of a scheme. And she likes purple. You can tell most of her bikes are purple-ish. So yeah, and that purple cassette, absolutely lovely. Now I had to buy the actual shifting bits. Now we're very much a fan of the SRAM Access product. especially in the 1x. It's so simple. It's so easy for your brain to understand those paddles. I love it. And she runs that on her BMC, so she's used to it. And so that was a simple thing. The only thing I had to do besides getting the rival front shifters was get a rear derailleur and the mullet set up. That's a SRAM XO mountain bike derailleur. And so we were all set to jet that way. One of the other key things on this bike was going to be the wheels. Now, her Amonda SLR had a set of Hunt 30 carbons. I think they call them something different now, but at the time, these were the 30 carbons. And they're a fairly old set of wheels in the sense. I bought these back when Hunt first really started, and I've moved them kind of from bike to bike. They're still performing really, really well. Changed the free hub body to SRAM XDR. They still, Hunt, bless their hearts, still had the parts available for this older hub to get that done. So kudos to them. I was able to reuse the wheels. They're reasonably modern, width 21 internals, 21, 22, something like that. They're light. I mean, they're like, I think they're 1,400 grams or a little less, right? So that's great for her. And all I had to do was clean them up a little bit. And bada boom, bada bing, we were in. Now, the tires for now on this bike, it's a set of Schwalbe Pro 1s and a 30. But it's not what I'm going to stay with. It's just kind of what was on there. I'm trying to decide what to do. I think what I'm going to do after using these Specialized Turbo S-Works turbos on my road bike, which I just did a review on, those have been great tires. I think what I'm going to do is go to that tire in a 32. And I'll give her a little bit more meat, probably end up being about a 33-ish wide tire when it's all said and done. I think that's what I'm going to do. And then if we go play in the dirt a little bit, I'll probably just get a spare set of wheels, a little less fancy than these, and run something like a 38 or a 40 or whatever I can fit in there for those days we're going to go play in rougher terrain. So now I got the wheels, shifting bits, crank, and cassette, drivetrain, all that stuff figured out. And so I started assembling parts on the bike once I got all that in there, kind of set it on the ground and started making some measurements, because by then I have a stem and a handlebar on there that I had moved over from the Amonda. Very nice carbon Bont Ranger handlebar, and I thought, ooh, this is going to be good. Maybe I'm going to do a little spacing because this had a little less stack than her BMC according to the chart. Here's where things went a little bit sideways, Grannygear. What I hadn't taken into consideration is all of the built-in spacing that is above the headset on her BMC bike. Because when I started measuring the turner, I already had taken numbers off her BMC. I knew where the saddle was in relation to the handlebars, in relation to the stem. I knew where the saddle was in relation to the center of the bottom bracket. I knew where the handlebar was in relation to the saddle. Getting it right reach, well, that was easy. That worked out great. But the stack, oh my goodness, I was like an inch low. Here I am with this brand new build going on. Hey honey, you got me the perfect bike. And now I'm thinking, holy smokes, I'm not sure if I can get the handlebar high enough. Here we are flipping the stem. Flip the stem, put a little extra spacer in it. I'm like, whoo, I'm still like a ½ an inch short. Darn, that could be a problem for her because she is actually very intuitive with her fit. She's very sensitive, so I don't think I was going to get away with it. And I'm thinking, nuts. Well, if I needed an extra ½ inch and I'm pretty much out of spacers under the stem and the stem's already flipped up, well, one of the things you can do is get a handlebar that has some built-in rise to it. And there's quite a few of them out there. Well, Richie to the rescue. They were able to supply me with a handlebar. I'll put the model up on the screen, and I'll put a lot of the, I'm going to put like a parts list also in the description. So if you want to look at some of the stuff, you can go there. And it had a 15 millimeters of rise, which got me pretty close. 20 millimeters is ½ an inch. And I thought, okay, that probably will be okay. We'll see how it works out. Put the Ritchie handlebar on there, got it all in there, measured it, pretty much hit my numbers. We made some fine adjustments, it seemed to be good. Put some nice Chinelli, it's a nice Chinelli purple tape on there. It's one of my favorite handlebar tapes. It's very inexpensive and it feels great. I have it on my cyclosis gravel bike. I'll tell you, if you're tired of paying, I got to do a video on this stuff. If you're tired of paying $50 for handlebar tape that you get rid of every year pretty much. This Chinelli stuff is awesome. Now I was curious to see, after we had all that set, what the bike weighed. Now keep in mind, at this point it has SPD pedals on it, not XTR or anything, SPD mountain bike pedals, so nothing fancy. It had a little mini pump attached to the frame. That's her little emergency mini pump, just in case. And it had water bottle cages on it, and it had a computer mount on it. And other than that, I think that was pretty much the bike as it was built. Threw it up on the scale, 18.5 pounds. Well, you know what? That's not too bad, because the pedals themselves and the pump, that's got to be a pound, right? Maybe more, I don't know. So really it was probably somewhere around, I would guess, a 17 and change pound build. I mean, wow, I don't think that's too bad at all. For titanium frame with the mullet build, I think that's in the ballpark. Now what was left? Well, we need to go ride the thing. So a little bit of laps around the front of the house to get things kind of tweaked, and she seemed to be happy, and we went off for a ride. Now she invited a friend and to go to a coffee ride, and I tagged along because, you know, you got to take your mechanic along with you when you go on a first ride, just in case something didn't go well. And it went very, very well. I was watching her ride it. The fit seemed good. She's comfortable. And, you know, so here's one of the ways you know when you get your bike right, you don't notice anything. If you get on your bike, especially if you're an experienced cyclist, and you just pedal away and ride and enjoy the ride, and you don't think about whether or not your handlebar's in the right place, it just seems like it is, that is a win. And that's kind of what happened. Now, time will tell. We'll see over time if I need to adjust things. But so far, it was a very, very good experience on our first, I think we did 40 miles or so of coastal riding. So in the short term, it seems like I came really, really close to getting on target. And we'll see. Maybe I'll have to massage some things as time goes by. But I really do think this bike is going to be a great little addition to Mrs. Grannygear's quiver. Hey, thanks to all the people that make cool bike parts that help me make this a reality. Turner Bikes, Praxis, Hunt, Richie, thanks very much. Oh, and the Richie bar, I didn't mention that. That was sent to me at no charge, so thank you very much, Richie, for that. Anyway, all those guys, they really jumped in and helped me made this a great project that was a little more affordable. And for a little channel guy like me who pretty much writes the checks for things, that really helped out a lot. All right, guys, that's it for now. You guys have a great week and or weekend. And as always, you go ride your bikes.